Yep. There's no waiting room
Okay.
tonight.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And I'll start by reading our little script that we say at the beginning of every meeting. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the School Planning Committee meeting of June 17th, 2020. Please note that in accordance with the emergency orders announced by Governor Charlie Baker, to protect public health during the COVID-19 outbreak, this meeting will not be open to the public for physical attendance, and committee members are joining this meeting via Zoom conferencing. The meeting is, I believe, being live streamed, because I can see Joe on, live streamed and cable broadcast by ECAT. The meeting has been posted and minutes will be recording according to the open meeting law requirements. As per our past couple of meetings, I'm just going to start by confirming who from the School Planning Committee is here. I'm just going to ask that you respond with a yes or a no. I know that some members were going to be joining us late this evening. And then, as with past meetings, in order to get through our agenda as efficiently as possible, I'll introduce each agenda item, turn it over to PMA, and they can walk us through the updates that they have for us this evening. At the conclusion of this evening's meeting, I'm going to ask that if there are any members of the public who have questions or comments, that they either raise their hand or use the chat function, and we can respond to those. And I will ask that people keep their questions or comments to topics that are just on the agenda this evening. I think I've covered it. And so with that, I'm going to do just a quick roll call to see who's here. So Dr. Cabral.
Present.
Yep. Ken Carlson.
Yes.
Dottie Fulginetti, I believe, is joining us late this evening. Dave Field, I think I see. Yeah. Patrick Helen. Yeah.
Yep.
Caroline O'Neill.
Yes.
Connor Reed. Hi,
Here.
Connor. Yep. Let's see. Billy Soberai. Did he get in? Billy was having trouble getting in, he told me. So he may log in later. Jamie Stebbins. I know Jamie was going to be late this evening. Dave Twombly.
Here.
Ann Weintraub.
Here.
Jackie Weissman. I believe Jackie was going to be late as well. And then myself. Great. So with that, I'm going to start working through our agenda. So the first item on tonight's meeting is to approve the minutes from May 20th, 2020. Can I please have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Ken.
Ken. Can I have a second, please?
O'Neill, second.
And I'm going to do a roll call vote. Cabral.
Cabral, yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Patrick Helen.
Yes. Helen, yes.
Caroline O'Neill.
O'Neill, yes.
Connor Reed.
Yes.
Ann Weintraub.
Yes.
And Jane Martin, yes. Nobody else. Billy, I'm sorry, what?
Billy Silbride's here.
Oh, great. Billy.
Here.
And a motion, we had a motion and a second to approve the minutes. And I had to do a roll call vote. So do you approve the minutes? Billy?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that, I am going to turn the meeting over to Walter, who's going to just take us through first the MSBA design status update meeting that was held, and then progress on all of the focus groups. If committee members have questions during the presentation, you can go ahead and raise your hand or make a comment in the, let us know through the chat. But I'm going to, again, ask members of the public to hold off until the end of the meeting. So, thanks. Go ahead.
Okay, Jane, can everyone, I'm screen sharing, can everyone see it?
Yep.
All right, perfect. All right, so we had the MSBA design status update meeting on 6/4. Typically, this meeting is held at the designer's office, and it's really just to update the MSBA on where the plans have come from since the submission of the schematic design. So Perkins Eastman took MSBA through the site plans, the floor plans, the playground and exterior areas, and then a quick presentation on the exterior materials and finishes. MSBA had a quick Q&A period about the design. There's some questions about the rotation of the gymnasium, which occurred as a refinement during the DD portion. We also updated them on the naming of the building. And we sent over the school committee vote that took place at. MSBA reviewed the 60% CD phase, the 90% CD phase, and let us know that if we have any changes to the schedule, just keep them aware. And then to wrap up the meeting, we just went over Module 7 and Module 8, which PMA and Perkins are very familiar with, but it was a very good meeting. Really no outstanding action items. It was just sending over the school committee vote. So Chad or Perkins or Alicia, if you guys have anything to add, please feel free.
I thought you guys did a great job. This is David Twombly. I thought that PMA and Perkins Eastman, you guys were great in that meeting. So really appreciate all your help.
Thank you.
I agree. It was well done.
All right.
Thank you. I think I'd just like to point out this meeting was it was from design changes from at the end of SD, which if you remember was a while ago. So the rotation of the gym is probably long forgotten in most of your minds, but we had to bring them up to speed from end of SD to D. So just a point of clarification, the gym has not been rotated in a very long time. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that's the point at which they needed an update. So we had to go to the Wayback Machine, if you will. So.
Yep. All right. And with that, I will turn this back over to Perkins Eastman and their consultants to go over the focus group updates. And if someone just wants to yell next slide, I'll move it along.
I think Ashley's on. Ashley?
Hey, I'm right here.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Ashley. So we're just going to present very quickly some of the updates we have made since the SD package. Some of the bigger ones included adding additional parking spaces, as well as adding more parking spaces closer to the school, and then leaving the additional parking spaces along Spooner Street as well. So we think that was a pretty large benefit. I think there's a mouse there right now where you can see a sign that says additional parking. So we've increased our total parking count to 213 total, which is up for 191. So that's been an improvement. Another really large improvement has been with the sports fields. We've always had the multi-use field in the middle, closer to Richard Olmsted Elementary School, which was a smaller field. And then now we've actually been able to rotate the official softball field and fit a multi-use field in the middle of that. So we have now currently one official size softball field, one grass practice softball field, one multi-use field, and then the practice field that you see over on your left next to Richardson Olmsted. Additionally to that, we have reviewed our site plan with safety and access and DPW. So we've added ambulance spaces, reviewed turning radii. We have also looked at snow storage. So up near the play area, there's snow storage around the bus loop. Yep, right there. You'll see there's a notation where we've sort of angled the fencing for the playgrounds. So we have a perfect spot for snow storage there. We've also been digging into the details of the irrigation. So we will be required to have an irrigation control structure, if you will. It's not very big, but we did go through some options of locating it in the basement, which we didn't really have space for, but also can be challenging in terms of access. So we've located it where you see that arrow today, and that will have access from the sidewalk. We've also looked at the fields in terms of relocating the scoreboards. We're not currently adding bleachers in this plan, and I believe the bleachers are temporary anyway, but we are adding spaces for those bleachers to accommodate the use of those fields. We looked at signage locations and then also additional pedestrian connections. Is there any questions before we switch to our next slide? All right, I think we can keep moving forward. Here's just a little deep dive into the fields and some imagery. So you can see our official softball fields on the picture to the right. And then you get a nice view of the aerial of the fields from what you'd see if you're in Spooner Street, if you flew straight up, looking towards the fields, and then view of the grass fields on the right. So we think this has been a big improvement. What we've heard from a lot of the user groups is that this multi-use fields in the center is really, really important. So we're happy to be able to accommodate that. Next slide. We also had some great user groups talking about the playgrounds. This was an update for our first playground meeting. At the first meeting, we really just discussed what we were looking for, how we wanted those playgrounds to be programmed. And then in this next presentation, we took all that information and synthesized that into a bigger package where we developed and selected playground structures for the K-2 playground located in the front entrance playground, and the pre-K playground. On your left, you'll just see a couple of views of those. And there's a much more intensive playground package if anyone is interested in seeing that. Next slide. Fencing and security was something that was really, really important. And I think at the ST level, we didn't have it totally nailed down. So this is something that's been refined over the last couple months and weeks. So we have 3 different kinds of fencing. We have the 4-foot ornamental fencing, which is really servicing the playgrounds. But I think one of the large improvements is that at that back edge of the K-2 playground, I don't know if someone can put their mouse on it, we do have fencing. And I think what this is helping is it's, yep, right there in red, is that it's just making managing the students out at recess much, much easier. And there are gates, so there's plenty of access to the fields, but I think it gives staff a way to compartmentalize and really have eyes on the playgrounds. And then you can also see where we have backstop fencing, and then in areas where security is hyper important, we need something a little bit taller and much more secure. We have the 6-foot tall ornamental fence that's located at the pre-K playground, which is right down to the left, right there, and then also at the courtyard to your right and up. And those are areas where the access was really just, you know, there can be access out, but people aren't necessarily accessing those areas from the outside in, if that makes sense. Next slide. This is a look at the front entrance playground. This was really nature inspired. So you can see the wood play structures. We have a lot of climbing logs. Each playground has this overlay of sensory elements. So we have the grandiose chime, which is a really interactive, fun musical instrument. You have steppers through these fire retention areas on the sides, outdoor blackboards, which are really, really fun, climbers, and then lots of wood benches and seating. And then again, trying to incorporate greenery on the whole exterior in the forms of these fire retention areas, which are really outdoor learning areas too. Next slide. So this is our largest playground. This is what we're calling the Ames Adventure theme. So this is themed with everything: air, water, sky, planets, lots of climbers, we have slides, we have musical instruments, and we have lots and lots of swings, which we found out were hyper important. This is also where you see a pathway sweeping through it, which is for the 1 mile club. I think 6 loops around makes 1 mile. So we reviewed all of these play structures with the user group. We also started looking at different color schemes. So that's what you see on the right. I think it was pretty unanimous that the color schemes should be pretty neutral. So in this area, we've gone with a green, dark blue, and tan color. Next slide. And I know I'm breezing through this because I think everybody's seen these quite a few times, but I'm happy to elaborate if anyone wants to stop me. This is the pre-K playground. This has our agricultural theme. A little update that you probably didn't see in the last submission is these striations in the playground surfacing, which I think is really cool and fun. It's based off this theme of like a wheat field or the mowing lines that you'd see on an actual farm or an actual field. So here we have the Play Village, Fire Station, Market Cafe. We have a Play Tractor, a little trike track wrapping around. We do have some swings in here, and then a multi-component structure with climbers, signs, and slides. And this one, we did go through a lot of different elements here in different color schemes. Again, looking for a neutral theme. You know, the red, the primaries were good, but maybe a little too bright. And then the browns maybe just a little too neutral. So I think right up top is a sweet spot where we have the greens and some tans and some very light yellows. Next slide. And then the next part of this discussion, which we're not really going to get hugely into today because we have a user group meeting scheduled for next week, is the play surfacing options. So this is where we're going through options for what we want to do for the actual surface. Massachusetts has some very strict guidelines, and we need to meet fall attenuation guidelines. So looking through all these options, the big three that we have that are useful and important to us, we have the port in place, play turf, and rubber mats. So all of these options meet fall attenuation standards, they meet Mass ADA standards, and they're applicable for our situation. So those will be the options we're going to dig deeper into on Tuesday. And we have some information that's going to go out after this meeting. So we encourage everyone to look through it, come up with questions, and then we'll have a discussion following this. Next slide. And that's all I have on site. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to field them at this time.
Ash, I just have,
sorry.
sorry, I just have one question, which
Sure.
is, who's attending, who's been invited, and do you know kind of the user group for the play surfacing?
Actually, Dan and Walter, do you mind speaking to that? I haven't seen exactly who's on the list. I think whoever would like to come is certainly
Okay.
welcome.
Okay,
Right now, it's the same group that is on the playground
Okay.
focus group meeting. But yeah, anyone that does want to come can attend. I think we'd like to add that Ashley noted that the information on these three materials and kind of the plans are going to go out to this group tonight.
okay.
Excuse me. And that focus group meeting is going to happen next week. Following that meeting, or at the conclusion of that meeting, that group will have a recommendation for the school planning committee. And at the July SPC meeting, we'll be looking for the school planning committee to come to a final decision on what the play surface materials will be, because Perkins Eastman will need to move forward with the design, and they do become quite different when you're talking about the port in place, the play turf, and the rubber mats. All of them have their pros and cons, but we will be looking for a decision at that meeting. Leisha or Don or Chad, anything to add on that discussion, please.
Hey, what about me?
Oh, Dan too. Sorry, you're right in the middle of the screen. I couldn't see you.
I just add that I don't know if we're going to send that out tonight. I think we want to take a look at it as a team internally, because it just kind of came through today, and I know it's been circulated around our team internally, but I do want to read through it to make sure before we send it out to you guys. So could be
okay. So by the end of the week.
Yep.
Okay.
Jane, this is David. To answer your question about who's on the committee, it's teachers. I think there were some nurses that were on the committee. The principals were on the committee. Chrissy has attended the meetings, and Leisha and I. So it's a pretty good group, actually.
Yeah, but as always, this committee is invited to attend any of those.
Right.
And if there are questions or people would like more information about the play surface, we would definitely encourage you to attend this one next week.
Which is Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Sorry.
Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I think, Walter.
Okay.
9 a.m. I think for the playground.
9 a.m. I have it Tuesday at 9 a.m. on my schedule.
Never mind. It's 9 a.m. I'll see
okay.
everybody then.
Thank you.
Walter,
Thank you.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you sent out a schedule to everybody, I think,
He
at
did.
least when we had all the focus group meetings, so.
Yep.
There was, I just didn't, I don't have it in front of me and I
Yeah,
didn't
no
remember off the top of my head in case somebody was watching.
I couldn't pull it up. I have both screens.
The
at
members,
least right now.
the members, yeah, I just looked at the invite and the members here are all on it. So if you go back to that email, you'll have the link for that meeting if you're interested.
Right. If there's no further questions, we can go back to Dan and Dawn for the MEP and Sarah for the MEP update.
Who wants it?
Thought you
Okay,
were-
I'm the only one talking, so I'll do it. I'll do it. So we had the MEP update meeting, and a lot of these when we enter CDs are more to really remind everybody what we're doing and make sure we're all still on track and everybody knows what is going to be happening. And they're more tweaks than major things. And some of these tweaks that we made at that meeting were there was a request, which I think was a really good one, to extend the canopy that's at the community interest over a bit to cover the custodial and receiving doors, because it kind of stopped a little short there. And, we can extend it about 10 feet or so, and that would give some protection to that overhead door, which I think is not only great because it'll protect the guys who are unloading there, but it'll also, overhead doors tend to be subjected to weather and get rain and water underneath them at times. And I think this will help to alleviate that as well.
It actually, sorry to interrupt you, it's Dawn. We actually took it over the overhead door, and then there's a double man door just down from that, a little bit farther, that would be west. We took over that as well. So just if there's a package or a delivery standing at that door waiting for the custodian to come receive it, they would not be rained on as well. So we took it just past that garage door, if that's okay with everyone here, that request. It basically protects both receiving doors, the overhead as well as the double 6 foot wide regular old door.
Okay, hearing that seems okay. Recommendation was made to switch all the drinking fountains over to bottle fillers, and we're going to recommend keeping a few bubblers at the CAF and gym, because I know that every kid this age is sent to school with a water bottle. I know many people are carrying water bottles, but at night when you have a gym or a kind of a basketball team or someone in there using it from community use, they may not come with a water bottle. And I don't think you want to provide cups. So want to know if that's okay with everybody, and if the idea of using water bottles for everything is okay as well. Bottle fillers.
And is that changing all of those that are in the corridors? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Would there still be bubblers in the classrooms at the classroom sinks, or no?
There was a request for those, and we actually asked for some cuts from our plumbing engineer to have like a gooseneck to potentially accommodate filling water bottles in classrooms as well. So that's being looked at.
Yeah, just for a point of clarification, the recommendation came from the nurses, particularly in light of the COVID situation, but just in general, the issue of hygiene and with children's mouths all over the bubblers. And we do, and certainly Ann Weintraub, who's here, can chime in, we do have almost all children bringing in water bottles, and certainly can provide for the few that don't. So that came actually from a concern of hygiene through the nurses.
Yeah, I agree, Leisha. We typically, kids bring water bottles anyway. And if they don't, we provide them for them.
We talked a little bit about the water testing that had been performed when the building is now obviously shut down. Was requested that we come back in September and redo that, which we will make arrangements to do so when the building is reoccupied. There was a little bit about coordination for connecting the existing fiber optic system. request to rework or look at the main electrical room layout. Try not to remove more space from the central administration storage area, which I think we are working on. And we got a message from Columbia Gas that at this moment, they are going to provide the service upgrade and service install at no cost to this project. But of course, they have on the bottom of the letter saying that could change. But right now, they're saying they're not gonna. They don't have any. As of June 10th, when they sent the letter to us, there is no cost, which is good because usually there's back charges from the utilities.
And we do have that money accounted for in the budget at this time, so it would just be money that is unspent out of project funds.
How much, I'm just curious, how much do we know what that line item was? So if we don't spend it, I'm sure it's not a huge amount, so.
I don't have the 3011 in front of me, but my guess would be somewhere between $50,000 to $100,000 in that line item. But
it's usually about $100 grand. It's usually about $100,000 for utility back charges, and this would be one of.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
So Dan, quick clarification, the main electrical room for Central, is that the one that is currently there to move it out, or is there another area that needs to be taken from Central?
No, I think we're not going to take any. I think there was a request to rework that layout to try to shrink it so that we could give you more space back. We can't move it now.
Okay. Yeah, the business department did definitely express some concern about storage. So that's probably what that is. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, next slide. Security meeting we had as well that was June 3rd. There again, we've had previous security meetings, and this was a recap of the security systems and to explain to everyone what we had put in the package for pricing and make sure that we're still going in the right direction and basically clarifying, getting into a little bit more of the detail. Here's some of the details we talked about at that meeting. Was the access to the building. We reviewed all the locations, camera and access points. We discovered that card key is preferred over fob with separate badges, and one lanyard would be preferred. We talked about the lockdown sequence. There was a request to up the CCTV storage to 45 days of video, which is fine. There was an action item for the town to confirm the quantity of access cards. And there was a little bit of discussion about the community room programming with regards to how it will be used and how visitors will be let in and out of the building. So I think that still remains, but I would imagine that's really a function of how you intend to check in and check out people who are coming to the community room. And if there's any design changes that come from that.
Dan, for any of these things on these slides, are there any that potentially would reflect anything beyond a nominal increase from what was budgeted for it?
No.
Okay.
No, usually no. There's none of for example, the increase in storage from 30 to 45 days is nominal.
Okay, so just maybe for the chair's consideration, a simple, very simple visual. If as we go through focus group things, if there's anything, maybe bolded or something, if it's something that we should be discussing because there's some sort of implication financially, I don't know, is that?
That would absolutely be called out if there was, and it would also be added.
Yep.
It would be brought to this committee and then also discussed likely at the value management at the end of each design phase. So at the end of this design phase, it would be on our list to review with you as well after being told about it following the meetings.
Thank you.
It might even have its own slide.
Okay, good. Because I mean, as a lay person, I'm looking at these and I don't know if there are implications or not. So I'm afraid I'm not asking the right questions. So that's
right. These are all, if there was something of any significance, we would probably have, and there's one that's the traffic one we're going to have when we talk about Columbus Ave, you'll see that is something we need to talk about.
Perfect. Thank you.
Implications like that.
And the water treatment.
Yep.
And I do have a follow-up. When you ask the question about, further clarification from the town as requested, in terms of use of the community room, or if that comes up with other issues, is there a timing associated with that? In other words, you need that clarification sooner rather than later because it could affect design. If there's something that you need from us that affects, that has timing implications, can you be calling that out too? Because I want to
Sure.
make sure these kinds of things don't get lost.
Sure. I mean, this one was only a week ago, so we're
Yep.
not in a critical position right now, but we would definitely ask when there was but I can call that out on further when slides come up at
Okay.
in the future. We can
Thank
add
you.
that.
Thank you.
Next. Dawn.
How quick can you recap a full day?
At the risk of overwhelming you with words, we had a full day last Tuesday. This was our third-ish round because some rounds have had sort of subsequent either follow-up meetings and whatnot. But third round of user meetings. So basically they were somewhere in the, I don't even know, somewhere plus or minus a half an hour for each group from 9 o'clock to almost 6 o'clock. So it was a nice full day. And the gist of kind of the highlights, if you will, out of the kitchen, they were considering a griddle and an additional point of sale station, just worried about the number of, because there are 2 shown and they potentially want 3. So not that all of that's not a big deal. Our kitchen consultant is working on that. There were some questions about vending, which I think Leisha was gonna let Marilyn know. They were gonna, Leisha and I had talked about this previously. So if there is an intention to have an after hours vending, just let us know because we need to allocate a location. I don't want it to be an afterthought. The teachers' rooms, there was a request to add microwaves. There's already refrigerators. We're gonna do 2 refrigerators in each, add some microwaves as well as copy scanning stations and some counters for storage, for paper goods, etc. We're gonna do laser jet printers on all the flexible learning spaces on the upper floor with the older kids so they could just walk out of their room and pick up prints and send things directly. There's the bottle filler in the classroom, so looking into that. The media center I'm going to get into in a minute. We actually have a slide for that. So that's the last piece of the building that needed sort of a design update. So I'm going to get into that in just a minute. We talked about custodial areas, adding charging stations. So again, a lot of this is like into the detail, if you will. Distance learning, we talked about capabilities of adding some data ports in the ceiling to give some flexibility for that in the future, just given the whole COVID. No one's really sure as far as distance learning and trying to integrate if students just in the future are out, how does that actually work? So we're gonna make provisions to allow any classroom to potentially put a camera in the ceiling. Pre-K area, oh, that's in the gymnasium. We actually have a follow-up with Corinne this coming Friday as far as the pre-K play within the gym and some of the gym areas, because that gym meeting went really quickly. So that's one area where we're just gonna need to follow up with the PE teachers. The art room kiln, we talked about that. I think in the end, they decided they, with a follow-up email right after that set of meetings, we talked about 1 kiln versus 2, and I think the decision was just 1 because they didn't want to sacrifice some storage area. Because as we all know, we get what we get with MSBA square footage. So it's a function of if they wanted 2 kilns, they might have to reduce the storage area. So 1 kiln, larger storage, and then furnishings. We talked about that all will get fleshed out as the building, as we're closer to construction, but flexible throughout. And then the main office, there was some legitimate concern about visibility into the vestibule, and I recognize that that's a problem. So we're going to look into the best way to keep that safe, but have plenty of visibility to that front plaza with the gorgeous wood play structure up there. What are you doing to me here, Walter? Okay, next slide. So that's the best we could wrap up a full day of discussions.
Honestly, Dawn, that was a great collection of the comments. Like I said at the MSBA meeting, throughout, you guys are really listening to what the staff is sharing and incorporating it perfectly. And, kudos for that. You
Thank you.
got all the notes I got.
Thank you, Alicia. And I'll convey that to our team as well, because we have a team of awesome people that are behind us making these changes. So thank you for that. Yeah, I will. And thank you for the kind words. Alicia said some really nice things on that call about us, and it's always nice to hear positive feedback. So thank you. All right, Walter, I don't know if this is me. You want to go to the next slide? This is Dan Colley.
It's me. Okay, at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about the water quality test results and treatments. First thing I want to mention is that is an apology to everybody. I had read some of these reports incorrectly. So treatment for perchlorate, nitrate, and trichloroethylene is not required, as each are within the limits, well under the maximum contaminant levels. So we have not chased that down because it's not required at all. So we did get costs for the recommended equipment with an extra M, and the initial project cost is about $14,650. And there was questions about the yearly cost, replacing the filter media, and it's about $85. And then there's media in one of the other part of the unit that's $2,000. That's on a 3-year cycle. So you're looking at maybe about a $750 to $60 a year investment as a maintenance cost, and about close to a $15,000 upfront cost to take care of the water scale and other water hardness issues. The other question that was asked was about the PFAS and what that would cost to do. And the initial system is about $52,000 to add to the project. And then the rebedding of the tank, which is an unknown amount of time, is about $14,375 each time you do that. And it's unknown because we don't know how long. You would know after the first cycle how long, if it's a 6 month, 8 month, year, 2 years, how long that bedding lasts. So, but that's about the cost of that. So again, you don't, and that's a totally an optional thing. The first one's recommended. When we go back and test again in September, we may find that the first one, when the building's fully operational, those numbers may go down, and maybe we don't need to chase this, but it's a pretty small cost in the upfront for the recommended equipment. So it's a matter of whether or not everyone agrees that we should go ahead and just keep that piece in. And then I think there's an agenda item to talk a little bit more about the PFAS coming up.
Yeah.
Are there any questions on this?
When we had reached out to David and Connor, and that piece is up further, but if you guys have anything to add to this, or you want to input your thoughts right now on these recommendations and the optional equipment, please feel free.
Thanks, Dave Field here. Yeah, thank you for getting the information about the operational costs, because that is a big component of it. I am fine with the recommended equipment if it's going to prolong the life of the equipment, and that's really to take out the water hardness, calcium scale, which is intrinsic in our water and most water. So I don't have a problem with that at all. We can talk about PFAS later, but I would recommend against the PFAS, since the town's going for a town-wide global solution here instead of just one school. So that's all I really need to say about that at this time.
Okay. Dan, is it accurate to say that the recommended costs are well within our budget, and the optional cost would be a discussion at that value management meeting if it were to be necessary?
It's actually, the recommended equipment is pretty far below what we carried at the estimate stage. I think we carried $50,000 for this, and it's $15,000. So we're between the two of these, it's not really a big budget crunch issue, but so I think we have enough. We could still put it on the VE log as the optional equipment, but the recommended equipment we had fully
Yep.
We had
Great.
enough money in the budget to
Covered.
do that.
Yep.
Yep.
Great. All right. If there's nothing else on these items, we can. Oh, go ahead, Connor. Sorry.
So just to be clear, is the design team or Jane, is the committee looking for some sort of formal vote by this committee today on whether or not to proceed with including the optional PFAS equipment, or is that going to just be rolled into a scoping exercise at a later date?
So I think what I understood them to say is that we were perhaps going to have, and I'm not looking further at the slides, that you were going to have another conversation. Did you have this on the agenda further down, Walter? Did I?
Yeah, we did, but it does kind of tie into this right here. And it was really just what Dave said, that the town is looking at upgrading those systems in the near future, and that this may be a redundant system if we were to put it in at the school, that this is likely to be handled in the near future.
So at some point, and this connects back to Connor's question about whether or not you need us to vote on this tonight, which I guess we don't have.
I don't think so. Nope, okay. We can do it. We can do it at the scoping, at the end of this.
Yeah, this can happen at 60% VE conversation.
Okay.
This thing is tacked on to the end in between the pipe coming into the building, so it's not going to affect us too much. It's pretty minor.
And you want to wait for further testing in September anyway, right? Or is that not related to this?
We're gonna do that anyway, just to confirm that the recommended equipment is the right stuff. But I think we have plenty of money in the budget to do it, and it seems like right now that's what the person who did the testing initially recommends.
Connor, does that answer your question? Just to make sure.
Yeah, I just building on what Dave said, for the committee's benefit, the timeline we're working on is that Monday night we should be, assuming voters go along with it at town meeting, funding the first part of the town's PFAS preparedness and engineering to start planning for townwide plants. Just based on the timing of this project, assuming things proceed with the townwide treatment, those should probably be complete around the same time within a year of each other. So it's kind of a question of redundancy for the committee. Obviously, it's not a huge price tag, but we are publicly committed to and working towards the townwide solution. So it's a redundancy question, I think, for folks to consider.
Yep, absolutely. And those tests will help confirm, and we'll be able to do this with the knowledge of what happens next week and in the next couple months.
Walter, can I ask you a question? This is David. On the bottom of the slide, it says operational costs, rebed the tank. Is that regarding the recommended equipment, or is that regarding the PFAS equipment if we were to add that on?
Only the PFAS equipment.
All right. Yep. That would be another reason as far as not to do the redundancy, because then we'd be paying $14,000 periodically.
Plus whatever you're doing on the other one.
Right, right.
Yep.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna mute myself. Dan and Vinod, go ahead.
Do we know done, or am I doing this?
Oh,
Oh, there he is.
I just when I didn't have a link, but I can walk through this.
Okay.
So I believe at one of the previous meetings there was some discussion about how the new north-south access road would connect to Columbus Avenue at the top. Given the proximity of the middle school driveway and where the driveway for the middle school currently connects into that Columbus Avenue, Western Avenue intersection, we all recognize that there needs to be some changes that need to happen there. And we wanted to define the scope of those changes a little bit better for discussion purposes. So we have developed, since the last time this conversation came up, we have two options. One that tries to work within, as close to the current scope of the project as close to it as possible, which is what you're seeing here as alternate one. So if we talk about that briefly here, so you have the north-south access road that's coming up right there, intersecting with Columbus Avenue. And there would be some changes that happen to the middle school parking lot on the left side of that connection, just so that we can increase the separation between the driveway for the middle school parking lot and the new access road. So all these legs are not coming into the intersection at the same general area, because that's going to cause confusion for drivers and not a good setup for traffic flow. So that shows the revised geometry, slightly revised geometry for the parking lot. It requires some reworking of the driveway that goes into the middle school parking lot. There are some changes to the parking spaces that need to happen. And as you can see at the bottom end of the parking lot, where the parking lot intersects with the new access road, the north-south access road, currently there is full access into that middle school parking lot from there, from Spooner Street. With this geometry, we won't be able to restore full access into the parking lot from the south, but there's potential where you see that red arrow to create an exit only from the middle school parking lot into the north-south connected road. So if you're going to the middle school, you're coming off of Columbus Avenue, you'd follow the dotted arrow at the top, you enter the middle school parking lot, travel south, drop off your student, and then you have the choice of either looping around in the parking lot and going back onto Columbus Ave, or if we open up that curb, a new curb cut where that red arrow is shown, you could use the new access road to go south to Lothrop Street, or you could turn left there and exit via Spooner Street. So the new middle school parking lot would have 3 ways to exit in the future with this configuration. There are some challenges with the geometry to make this work. Again, if we were trying to limit the amount of work that needs to happen to do this, you'll see the sort of relatively awkward S curve that's in there, and the tight geometry at the north. So again, this is all trying to contain the scope of work to what we can do within within reason and within the general layout that we were previously looking at. We also looked at much improved option, which I would call as the preferred option for the purpose of this discussion. So if you go to the next slide, this involves a little bit more work, both on the north as well as at the south of that parking lot. But what this does is it cleans up the geometry quite a bit, and it gives a full access on the southerly end of the parking lot where it intersects with the new access road. Yes, right there. So we have a brand new 4-way intersection that can be used to enter and exit the middle school parking lot. And it also cleans up on the top where you're entering the parking lot from Columbus Avenue. It's well separated from the Columbus Avenue, Western Avenue intersection. So everything's arranged efficiently for traffic flow in and out of the parking lot for middle school drop off and pickup, and also for efficient traffic flow on the access road that serves, in addition to Parkview, the new elementary school. It'll serve obviously all of the other schools in the school complex as well. But there's a cost differential between the alternate one plan I showed earlier and the plan that you see here. And also there's a little bit of an impact to parking on both. Option one or alternate one has a little bit more of an impact. I think there's like about 6 spaces that would be lost as part of that change. And then this preferred plan, I believe, has 2 spaces that are impacted by this design. And again, this needs to be fine-tuned and cleaned up quite a bit, but we wanted to put a geometry in front of you for both alternatives that we looked at, and get some initial feedback on the group's thoughts of which option works better for the school complex in general.
So when you talk about a cost differential, can you give us any sense of what that looks like? I'm not asking for an exact, but you know.
I know, I don't know if Keith is on the call. So CDW, the civil engineer, is looking at that. I don't want to venture a number right off the bat, but if Keith is not on, maybe we can circle back with the number. But I would say order of magnitude, it's the differential between alternate one and the preferred option that you see here is probably in the order of about 100 to 150,000. Again, that's just a very rough ballpark. I would wait to see the number from the civil engineer.
Dan and Vinod, are we saying that option one would be the cost carried in the budget at this point in time, and the upcharge would be the 150, or would there be more to consider with that?
So,
Right now, I think I'll alternate the option one, which is this one, right? No, that one.
Yep.
Is an upgrade to what we had in the documents
Yeah.
when we came into DD.
Yeah, I don't think
So
we
this
had
is-
any parking.
We didn't
being-
have any of this going on in this
Right.
top at the Columbus Ave. So there's going to be an uptick in cost on this to do this. Because all we had was the road going up and exiting at Columbus. And I understand the issue. I think it's a very it's a good point that coming in off the end of Columbus there, that's a very tight turn into the middle school parking lot. There's no question there. And I think this is a decent solution. My fear about option one versus option two is that they're quite a bit different. So to me, there really isn't, there's not a building like you can't do one and then come back later and do the other. You kind of want to do one or the other. And it seems like we really would rather do the final one, the one that works the best, but I fear the cost of it. And I think we need to understand what that is, because we're now quite far away from the campus that we're actually working on. We're all the way up the road.
So we have had considerable concerns about the traffic at the middle school. You've seen, we literally create the paths with cones. It's very confusing, and kids are coming out literally by the hundreds. I would really hate to, I hate to add anything to a budget, but if anyone's entertaining option one, I would really hate to invest money in something that's just going to trade one dangerous situation for another dangerous situation. This is a question, I guess, for Dave Fields. Is this any of this work that DPW would be involved with or not? I don't know.
We don't have any funding for any of it, if that's what you're asking.
No, but I think the funding is different if it's, it may play a role in this. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if that's something that we can do as a town, within the department, or if this is.
No, at this point, I think you'd have to do it as part of the project, unless schools have $150,000 in parking lot funds. That we need to do this as part of the project.
So I'm going to try and get some clarification here around. So the original, what we submitted and what was approved, was any cost carried in that project budget to do any work associated with tying that new road into Columbus Ave?
Yes, what you see, Dan, you can clarify, but I think what you can see, either this road here,
Yeah.
where I'm inclusive of the sidewalk.
Yep.
Okay.
But
So-
nothing to it's this portion. The making safe of the middle school parking lot was not carried.
It was just the access road.
Right. So what I
Yes.
think would be helpful for the project team to know, and somebody else can jump in here if I'm not being clear, is first of all, what was carried in the project for whatever work? What would be the cost of doing option A or alternate one, I guess is what we're calling it. What would be then the cost of doing alternate two?
Which is the preferred option.
Which is the preferred option.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we need to have a conversation about, you know I heard Dave Field say, obviously there's no town funding for this, but I don't even know if this is something we could put in the project budget. What would I don't know how the MSBA would view us putting something in the project budget that might not be directly related to the project. So I think we probably need some advice from PMA on that.
I think you may have an issue with the MSBA when it comes to reconfiguration of.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Okay.
I do think that will jump out and they'll likely flag that and take exception to it, unfortunately. Just the parking lot piece, the road connection, I think the traffic study supports that connection. It's just the work that accompanies it.
Chad, can you correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't we on our own dime anyway for all site work? So even anything we're doing here is at our own cost.
We are, yes. I don't, so I can't exactly explain the MSBA policy, but they're even a hard line on, for instance, we have one project in Andover that really wants a mechanical penthouse, and although past MSBA projects have allowed penthouses, they're saying absolutely not. We don't care if you're going to pay for every penny of it and the design costs and engineering costs. They're just taking a hard line. No, it can't happen as part of this project.
They wouldn't, there's a possibility that they wouldn't even allow us to include it in the scope of the project, even if we were going to fund the entirety of it.
There is a possibility, yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to need to get some clarification on that.
Is it something, Chad, that we should be reaching out to them on, or do we have a definitive line on that already?
I can reach out to them. My fear is once we reach out and we get that answer, our options to go back to the drawing board are somewhat limited and maybe reduce the scope of this, because then we have full attention on this issue. Yes, that's where the dangerous component comes in there.
Well, I think no matter in any event, the design team has to go and get the pricing for these, no matter what. So why don't we do that? Why don't we refine both these options to a level where we can get the ad cost for both of these things, and then start there so that we understand what kind of numbers we're really talking about here. And before, I agree with you, Chad. I wouldn't let this rabbit out of the hat until we absolutely have to.
I think we need to understand it better and understand exactly what the ramifications are if we don't do this additional work, because we can't create a safety issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we may need to smooth out that Columbus Ave intersection at the top here in order to make our connector road. That's an argument we can make. And once we make that argument successfully, then that trickles into the parking lot needing some work.
And making it safe as well.
It may just come down to the bottom piece where we're connecting the parking lot and reconfiguring all that stuff. That might be something that's a bridge too far, but we may be able to get them to acknowledge all the upper
stuff. You're saying they may ignore this as
they may say yes no to that, but maybe we get as far as the upper part as an agreement that that's part of really the connecting. Once we connect this to Columbus Ave, there's this 90-degree turn 30 feet away. So we've kind of got to address this other piece too. And once we do that, then we've got to address this upper parking area. And that they may feel is, but I think that once we get to the bottom and say, well, it'd be really convenient if we attach, they may not like that. So I think there's bites here that need to be, and I guess it makes sense to, we'll price it that way as well. Just so we know.
So it sounds like this is going to be an agenda probably on our July meeting.
Yep.
Update by then.
Yeah, I figured it would be, because I don't think we're quite 100%. We're not nearly 100% there yet. I mean, we've got line work to show, and I think this is definitely, I think everyone probably would agree, this is the preferred option. It smooths out the entrance to the middle school, and it keeps the maximum number of loses the least number of parking spots, and it accommodates a nicer, smoother connection out of the middle school lot into the new drives.
Well, and I don't know about you, Leisha, but one of the things that I keep thinking about is when we held any public meetings on this project, we really talked about putting, there were lots of concerns about traffic and congestion on campus. And we really highlighted the fact that this new road was going to allow us to solve some of the overall problems. So
right, but we did also say that there might be expenses that would not be covered under the project because they're off site.
Right. Okay.
Chad and Walter, I think, yeah, characterizing those changes at the northerly end of the parking lot as quote unquote traffic mitigation for the school project is essentially how you would do it. I mean, saying
or safety.
Right, and you need, let's say, signalized access to a high school project. I mean, I would assume MSBA would look at that as access improvements to make the school project work, right?
Yeah, I would tend to agree that we may have a better argument with this, Chad. I don't know if you agree, but it being safety related,
right? Yep.
That there may be a better argument to be made.
That's the only approach.
Yep, I agree. It's safety only.
Yep, but I think we need to develop this, and we need to cost it out a little bit more, and just have information before we engage the MSBA.
Yep. All right.
Okay,
so
we'll do that.
This will likely, it'll be on the agenda for next our next SPC meeting, and it'll probably be on the one following that as well. I wouldn't.
Probably.
Yep. Does the committee have anything else on this? Is there anyone like to weigh in on the options, or do we? I mean, we're going to price both of them, but any concerns with the preferred being the preferred?
There are a couple of slides without the arrows and the text. Maybe that wasn't inserted.
No, that was it. It was just these two.
Okay.
Vinod, let me ask what might be a horrible question. What about a rotary at that location?
I would say it can work. It'll have a big impact to parking. Let me put it this way. You can come up with a solution like this, what you're seeing here, without going through the expense and the impacts of a roundabout. But you could, it looks like there is room there between the middle school parking lot and then the right side of that access road. That's all public, or town or school property. So you can put in a roundabout there. But I feel that by the time you accommodate all the legs that need to go into the roundabout, the bus that comes in from the top of the circle, the middle school driveway, the new leg that we're adding with the access road, Columbus Ave from the east, Western Ave from the north, you would use up a lot of space. The diameter of the circle gets big, and you'd be losing quite a bit more than 5 or 10 spaces. You'll probably cut into that parking lot quite a bit, but it's doable.
Vinod, can I ask one last question about this graphic? The arrow at the top left, is that intended to be a one-way out even after this is all done? Or can a parent pull into the parking lot like you have, or elect to go to the front of the building?
Right now, the way it is set up, it's 24 feet wide, so we can figure out the lane markings that would allow a parent to go to that parking lot on the north side of the building. Do parents or teachers park on that side today? Or do they come around counterclockwise around the building?
They come around, but the way we set up drop off right now, we use cones and everything. And I'm wondering if there'd be an option to drop off at the front of the building and then go out. But it's a question for later. I just was curious if that was one arrow because it was one way.
Yeah, right now, the way I was envisioning it is to replicate the controls that are out there, which is one way coming out of that north side of the building. But if the intent is to get two-way travel, just that short section, so parents can drop off right in front of the building, we can define the lanes and the curb lines to work for that. There's room to do that there. This would be the time to do it, obviously, if that's something that you want to do.
Okay, well, it's just when people are dropping off and picking up when other people are trying to park, that's part of the issue we have now. So I wasn't sure how this alleviated that issue that we have, but.
So yeah, this solution actually what it does is if you were to use that, let's call it the entry closer to the building for parents to drop off, if they come up in front of the building, then they can get into the drop off a student, get into the parking lot and exit onto the access road without actually circulating through the parking lot. And that way you can create a separation between people that are parking in the lot and parents that are dropping off. So there is a way to separate out those two movements if that's the goal. I mean, yeah, we can lay this out to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Vinod and Dan, I think Dan actually brought up a good point. If you go towards the new school, that intersection on the lower part, that might be a good location for a roundabout or a rotary right there.
I would
So
say
you go
again,
towards the field there.
yeah, so normally to get a roundabout to work, the circle, the diameter of the circle is usually in the order of about 100 to 120 feet that you would put in there. And once you put that in, I know there are underground sewer treatment chambers right under that field right there, that solid dotted line.
Yeah, you're cut off right here.
Yeah, we would need to make sure that we avoid that. And again, it'll encroach into the middle school parking lot and affect some of the parking. But yeah, there's room to put in 100 to 120 foot circle to create those 4 connections on 4 sides of the circle. Yeah, you can do that.
I never really thought of a rotary until Dan said it. And it seemed to me, just looking at the plans, it would be more appropriate if you had the space to be on the lower part towards that field. But you guys are the experts, so I'll leave it up to you guys.
So operationally, I think what this does is the geometry that you see there at that intersection in the middle, that makes the north-south access road as your major roadway, and then the middle school drive and Spooner Street as the stop control approaches. So it's essentially a 2-way stop control intersection.
Yeah, just humbly as a driver, I don't find that rotaries tend to make people drive all that more safely, to be honest with you. It may just be the rotaries I'm on. I don't know.
Vinod, I really like this plan. Obviously, I think there's some tweaks we need to make, obviously, but I was originally thinking possibly a rotary with all those conflict points at Western Avenue and Columbus in the driveways. But I kind of like how you've separated that and have moved the entrance further down so you can have a discrete 4-way intersection. And again, on the south side, have a 4-way intersection there. I think it works very well. And I think whether we restrict turns so people enter from the north and exit the south, I think there's a lot of options here to make this work. I disagree with a rotary on the south because rotaries only work when you have equal legs of traffic in all approaches. In this, it's going to be heavy during the middle school drop off for everyone leaving the middle school. And then when the elementary school is going, there'll be people in another direction. So I don't really see the need there, but I do like this plan. I think with some tweaks, I think this could work well for both schools.
I agree.
And also, I mean, yeah, I've mentioned this even at other public forums before. These types of geometries give you a lot of flexibility to monitor how people actually drive it. And then you can, as you said, David, you could implement turn restrictions or flow restrictions during certain hours of the day to help manage the traffic flow the best way that works for the school. I mean, the traffic modeling and projections give you a framework to work with, but yeah, observing it in the real world situation is the best way to make those adjustments. And as long as we maintain that flexibility with the setup, I think we can make those things work.
Okay, so I think we're good. Are we good?
Yeah, I think we have action items on Perkins End, and PMA will hold off until we have further information, and we'll be discussing it the upcoming building committee meeting. So yes, I agree. All right. Go ahead, Dawn or Dan or Sarah.
That's me. Okay, so I promised you media center updates, and here we go. So on the left, you'll see what we carried at the end of design development, which I believe Dan presented in the February SPC, recognizing that there'd be a further update coming. So here we are. What's the downside of the left-hand option, which was the DD option? You can see the, Walter, would you go to the circulation desk? It's sort of in the middle so that you could try to get, nope, up, yeah, left, there, yeah. They kind of cut off from the professional development room as far as a visibility to who's coming in and out of the main media center door, which is right to your left, up, there. This is hard to do. So anyway, so you get cut off by that corner, and then up to the makerspace, you get cut off by the corner of the professional development room. What we were trying to do in this particular plan was to get direct access from the main corridor into that room. What I think Dan heard in February, and I apologize for missing that meeting. I think that was February vacation week, so I was away with my family. But he heard that that room could be inboard of the media center, and that a class could actually come through the media center to access that if needed. So let's move on to the plan on the right. So that's old plan. Potential option is on the right. And I'm going to make mine a little smaller because my people are blocking my, there we go. I couldn't see what was on the far right to speak to it. So with this revised plan, you can see the circulation desk is, the double doors come off the main corridor where the ramp comes up. Walter, can you follow me? Let's see if you can follow me. So the main doors to the media center are there. The circulation desk is to the left. Yep, and there's lots of storage behind it. There's no one circulating behind them. The only thing that's back there, there's some IT offices, a telecom room, and then there's an exit out directly to the stair, which we need as our second means of egress. So there's really not a lot of student circulation happening behind them, which is nice. They get a full view of the entry. And then there's a storytelling area just to the left of the, yep. So as you come in and walk towards the outside wall, you'll see through glass, that blue line is exterior glazing, and then there's sort of a tiered seating, and you can see the precedent image there, the tiered storytelling area. So you can see the Discovery Terrace beyond it, outside, yep, and then there's a tiered story area. Then we have lots of low stacks that, Walter, there's kind of double, yep, along there. So, and the rows are intentionally north-south so that the librarian can see up to the makerspace, which is at the far north side of the media center.
And in between the rows.
Yeah, so if you go up to where those tables are, the cluster of there, yep. So that's the maker space piece of the media center. To the right of that is like high-low storage, sink, etc. So that's where kids can do creations and get a little messy or build 3D things. And there's a delineation in the finishes that will identify that space, but it's open so that the librarian can sort of monitor that. Those glazing windows, if you will, I have a precedent to the left there, sort of a low built-in seat window. So again, it's kind of scaled to the younger age students and kind of cozy spaces that someone wants to curl up and read if there's not actually a class happening in the makerspace. Those are available for that. And then if you could just go to the south a little bit, Walter, there's a set of double doors that take you out to the Discovery Terrace. Nope, to your left. Yeah, perfect. So that's access to and from the Discovery Terrace, which is sort of an extension of the Makerspace and Media Center, just used for outdoor learning and exploration out there. To the right of all the low stacks, yep, is where a potential class can be held with the librarian. So the idea is that there's a dash line. It's hard to see, Walter, but the idea is that there could be a portable whiteboard that could sort of like split that space. So it's flexible and it'd be a piece of furniture or technology. Nope, to your left, and it runs north-south, right below your hand, down. Yep, there's a dash line there. So the idea is that you could delineate that space with a movable projection marker board, and a class could actually be held there. And then to the north is the embedded professional development room, which is those desks. There's a teaching wall, and with those sort of 3 lines with the curves, there's a rotating, I imagine that could be like a rotating gallery wall, like a place where student work can be displayed. It could be open when that professional development room is not being used. And that's actually from a library space. And what's nice about it is it becomes an extension of the media center when it's not being used. So conceptually, that's what we're thinking. The green is where the structure would be, and we're still coordinating some of that. What it does is kind of makes where the high roof, and that's the lower updated, right above where it says updated design, there's an elevation, Walter, with some green boxes. And basically that takes the high roof piece of it there at the, yep, below your hand, and just changes a little bit of what the actual mass of the building is doing. And then that window, which is the window in the professional development room, is that green box on the left. So I brought this up and talked about it with the media center users last Tuesday, and everyone seemed positive and on board with it. So what I said I'd do is bring it in front of you guys, which we promised to do back in February, and see if anyone had thoughts or concerns or questions. And if not, we would propose moving forward with it into construction documents.
So just quick comment, Dawn. That is an understatement. They were very excited about the space.
Oh, good.
From a supervision and instruction standpoint, you are, eliminating some of the distractions. The first one, there was a classroom like right inside the windows of the Discovery Terrace, which can be difficult to maybe get children engaged in what's happening in the indoors when the outdoors is right there. Now it's in the stacks, really, where you exit. So even you're not disturbing a class. If you have a class going out there, you're not disturbing a class going out there. There can be a class in the makerspace. There can be a class down in the where the rotating gallery walls are. There can even be a class in the professional development room. And the circulation desk, even though those professionals are typically circulating in the room, if they need to be at the circulation desk, they're checking out books, what have you, they have clear sight lines now everywhere. It's 180 degrees better. And it was a good design to begin with, but there were a couple of concerns, and I think this cleans them up really, really well from an instructional standpoint anyway.
Great, thank you for that. And we kind of knew at the end of DD, we knew we'd have a little bit of time to make it better. So at a certain point, you have to put your pencils down and make sure that you own the scope. And then this is basically, it's all within the same shell of the space. So it's just refinements at this point. So I'm glad I'm glad it was well received. Anyone else? If not, we'll plan on moving forward with this design, and
Yep.
just we have that layer of structural coordination to do, but that's all on us. So
you don't need a vote from us on that, do you?
nope, just sort of a general consensus. We're just bringing forward a major change to you guys as requested. So
With no budget impact, it's just a redesign of the space.
yeah, it's a refinement to the.
Okay. Okay.
Great. All right, excellent. Thanks, guys.
All right, we can jump right to the schedule update. Nothing's changed here. We're still working on the same track. Here are the milestones for the 60%. July 10th, we have our estimate set due. August 3rd is our reconciliation meeting. August 5th is our tentative SBC meeting, where we will be voting to submit the package. And then August 14th, the package goes to the MSBA. 90% will follow that. Here's the update to our work plan, as we said. So anyone on this committee, please feel free to join in on any of these meetings. And then the green is the highlights for those submission dates.
One clarification on this, Walter. The interior focus group did not happen this past Tuesday. It's next Wednesday.
Correct.
So
I thought I got that, and
all right.
I must have missed that one. All right.
It's on my radar, so I'm noticing that, and I want to just make sure it's clear.
Yep.
The 24th.
Yep.
And this is just because I don't recall, but I know that you know, when we were closing out DD, we had talked about that in each of the upcoming phases, and maybe we didn't mean 60%, maybe we meant 90%. We would be going back and doing you know, an abutters similar to what we did in DD, an abutters kind of focus group and update. And maybe we don't need to at this point, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that I'm pretty sure we told that group that we would keep them informed and updated and probably have another meeting with them.
I agree. I think we would need one of those. I think the better time to do that would likely be when we finalize a decision on the north-south connector road at Columbus Ave.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone disagrees, but on our team, on the project team, but please let me know. I think that would be a better time to update that group, but Chad, Dan.
Yep. No, that's the right time.
Okay, that's fine. Somebody needs to put it on their radar because I remembered today, but the likelihood that I'm going to remember next month or the month after is not guaranteed.
Yep, we won't forget.
Thank you.
I think that makes sense because I'm sure they're going to have questions about that, and if we don't have that, you know, if we don't have an idea of that, they might find that frustrating. I think once that's determined, that will be really helpful information for them.
Yeah, and a refined plan would be more helpful too for them.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, just a quick snapshot on the budget. Billed to date is the $2,530,313, and MSBA estimated reimbursement is the $1.379 million. And we will continue to work within that. And then we had any new business, if anyone has any. I don't think PMA has any, so we'll leave it to Perkins or the committee.
I don't think Perkins Eastman has any.
Leisha, do you have anything for the group? I don't think.
I don't.
Okay.
I've been talking to them an awful lot at the user meetings, so.
So I want to briefly say, I so appreciate all the work that's gone on over these last couple of months. The fact that we have kept things on track and moving without any big hiccups, despite the fact that we are working remotely, really speaks to the dedication of your team. And I'd also it speaks to the dedication of the volunteers who have stepped up and been willing to, you know, participate on all the focus groups. I think that they've really helped this process. So I'd like to publicly thank everyone who has continued to work so hard on this, despite whatever barriers may have been placed in our paths. So.
No problem. We'll keep moving it forward. Thank you. All right. Oh, Caroline, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, if anyone has worked hard, Jane Martin has. She forgets. I know that she conveyed well-deserved compliments to all of you, but Jane is just on this 24/7.
Wow.
And she hates compliments.
Okay, so let's thank you and let's talk about our next meetings.
I had our next meeting up on the work plan. I believe it is, oh, 1 second. July 15th.
Right. I am going to suggest, just because we did get feedback from a number of people that the 4:30 meeting time was proving to be difficult for some folks because they've moved back to a regular work environment now. So I'm hoping that we can maybe settle on a 5 o'clock start time. Does anybody have objections to that?
Nope.
And okay. So I'll follow up. I think it was Jamie who had said that the 4:30 was hard for him, but I know a couple of other people couldn't get here for 4:30 today either. So we'll just follow up, and let's tentatively plan that the next meeting will begin at 5 o'clock.
The invitation actually said 6 o'clock, but it's going to be up to you anyway,
Yep,
right?
we'll update it to 5, and we'll make sure, I apologize, we did not send out the agenda on that invite, so we'll make sure that gets out as soon as the agenda goes out.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right.
Anything else for tonight? Are there any comments or questions from anybody in the audience? I know we had a couple of people. Okay, so seeing none, I don't think, right? Is anybody seeing any that I'm not seeing? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
O'Neill, so moved.
We're all second.
And I'll do a quick roll call vote. Cabral,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Helen,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Sobrai,
Yes.
Weintraub,
Yes.
Martin, yes. Was there anybody else who joined the meeting that I didn't just grab?
Jackie.
Nope. Wiseman?
Yes.
Thanks, Jackie. Sorry I missed you. Great. Thanks. It was great to see everybody tonight, and we'll see you in about a month.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.